Welcome to the High Ticket Success Podcast, where premium coaches, consultants, and advisors come for bold strategies, big breakthroughs, and real results. I'm your host, Dave Dubow. Hey, gang, welcome back. Let me ask you a question. We all like making sales. How would you like to start making sales to bigger customers with bigger budgets? Well, if you like that idea, pay special attention to today's amazing guest. Zooming in from the Windy City, from Chicago, we've got Leslie Venetz, who knows all about sales, who knows all about B2B sales, who knows all about big B2B sales. So, Leslie, welcome to the show. Great to have you.
Thanks. I am just delighted to be here.
So, Leslie, give us a little snapshot of what you do and who you typically help with your business, because you do something really interesting, and you've got a very kind of specific niche and focus.
Yeah. So I spent an entire career in B2B sales as an enterprise seller and sales leaders. And I spent most of that time like working on penetrating and closing deals with like Fortune 500 C-suite accounts. I left 3.5 years ago to make what was my side hustle passion project into my full-time gig. So
Nice.
now I'm a founder selling my own services and expertise and doing what so many of us do, which is slowly working my way up channel and building enough credibility, building a big enough network that I can sell bigger and bigger deals. So now I'm predominantly doing sales strategy work for orgs that are between 30 and 50 million in revenue, that have questions about how to outbound better, how to do cold outreach better. And then I'm
Okay.
also very blessed to be on the speaking circuit, which is anybody that wants to learn, I'll come in and work with their sales team.
Very cool. All right. So when you're working with your ideal client and you're helping them get better at outbound, you heard the Canadian in that, I'm sure. So outbound, when you're working with them on that, where do they typically suck the most? Like where do these companies really need help when it comes to outbound sales?
Unfortunately, the list is long.
Yeah, I know. I'm chuckling because I suck at a lot of this kind of stuff myself, so I can only imagine.
Yeah,
What would you
yeah.
say are some of the big commonalities?
Yeah, a couple of things that I see come up a lot. One is when I'm looking at like organizational change, because I often come in as a sales strategist and we look at revamping or creating a strategy, creating the repeatable processes that back it up, and then creating those mindsets, those skill sets that, enable the process and the strategy. And leadership always underestimates how much change management is required. That it's not just asking somebody to do a new process, we're really asking them for a tremendous amount of trust
Hmm.
that this new process will get them the outcomes that they want. And that's especially important in sales jobs where, often up to like 50% of your pay is variable.
Hmm.
So I think that that's a big gap, that like people don't realize how much of it is this like emotional mindset leap that we're asking of folks. It's not just skill sets or a new territory.
Hmm.
Specific to outbound sales, the biggest mistake that I see folks make is around their messaging. And I
Okay.
would say 80, maybe 90% of sales messaging is still extraordinarily seller centric and company centric. And we see that in the emails that we get that's like, I'm your sales rep, our company, our feature, I sell. And we just forget that we have simply not earned the right for the stranger we're contacting to give a heck about any of that.
So when you start to work with a new client, and again, I'm trying to translate this into something that even, individual advisors, consultants, etc., can apply to themselves. Where do you usually get like the biggest bang for their buck to help them the fastest? What do you focus on turning around first?
Mm. Wow, that's a really interesting question, Dave. I do a little bit of founder-led advisory, which is close-ish to one-on-one coaching. Like it's specifically for founders that are leading founder-led sales motions. But I think the biggest bang that they get for their buck is me asking them questions because they so often are stuck in this um like it's just a bit chaotic running a business, right? We all know that. And I think probably most of your listeners have felt that point where they want to work on the business, but they feel like they're a bit stuck working in the business. And so having an advisor, a strategist, coach, whatever you want to call it, ask questions that help them take that step back and help them think more strategically instead of just situationally is a huge benefit.
Very good. Have you seen AI start to play a bigger role in anything that you're doing with your clients with their outbound sales?
Yes, yes. The two biggest changes that I'm seeing from AI, one is research, because you can just do so
Mm,
much more research so much faster now.
right.
I think the big gap is still reps get a bit overwhelmed. They aren't sure what to use. They aren't sure what's pertinent or how to translate, like how to connect the dots into the sales conversation. So there's still a bit of a skill set gap there. But that's incredible to be able to learn so much more about our prospects, their industries, the customers of our potential customers. I'm also seeing this is a negative. That's a positive, the research, I think.
Okay.
A
Yeah.
negative I'm seeing, Dave, is a lot of folks using it for like AI slop messaging. And
Yeah.
so they are using it to try to scale, but
Yeah.
they are scaling messaging and cold outreach systems that don't work. So they're just doing more of what doesn't work at scale, and
Yeah.
they're
More
burning a ton
robot
of
talk going out
bridges.
there.
It's
Yeah.
terrible. And something that just breaks my heart is I'm seeing so many folks come to market with like, I'm going to be your cold message person and I'll get you 20 meetings a month, 30 meetings a month, whatever these great promises are. And you see people, in those first like 2, maybe 3 months say like, oh, it's working. They're actually getting me meetings and they're not that bad. And then all of a sudden around month 4, no meetings. And it's because they've been sending like 30,000 messages a month to get you those 30 meetings, and they have burned every single potential prospect and
Yeah.
probably quite a few bridges. So it's it's lulling people into this false sense of wins, but it's just a bit of a band-aid, and once that band-aid gets ripped off a couple months in, then you've kind of screwed
Stops working.
yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Good points. I was checking out your YouTube channel. Very good, by the way. Before we jumped on the call, one of the things that piqued my curiosity was you were talking about the difference between, how did you put it? Between urgency and sales pressure. I think that's what you called it. So, can you kind of define that for us and show us how this might apply for us in our own sales process?
Yeah, yeah. You saw me get excited because the urgency versus sales pressure conversation is one of my absolute favorite. I train on this often, and I would say 90% of the time, sellers share that they've never actually had somebody distinguish between urgency and sales pressure, even though you constantly have bosses that are like, go out and make some urgency.
Well, yeah, and I mean that's what we try to do, and I think I've succeeded at just creating a bunch of sales pressure.
I think we've all fallen into that trap a little bit. So here's the difference. Urgency is not something that we can create. It is only something that we can uncover. So urgency is felt from within, whereas sales pressure is an external sort of pressure that we are putting on the prospect to buy on our
So,
timelines
so
for
the
our
urgency comes from within the prospect. It's something that's legitimately urgent for them in their life. Sales pressure is the stuff that we try to impose
yeah.
on the prospect to get them to buy our stuff, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. So an example of the most common form of sales pressure is often offering a discount for them to act now. Oh, if you
Right.
sign by Friday, I'll give you 10% off. Urgency, a checklist that I often give people to help themselves understand if they have uncovered urgency is one, do you have a priority that is a clear priority that they need to solve in the next 3 to 6 months? So it is you have the priority and you know it's the most important thing for them to solve in the next 3 to 6 months. And then have you established what the benefit is when they solve it within that timeline? And then have you also established what happens if they don't solve it. And if there is no negative consequence to them not solving for that priority in that 3 to 6 month timeline, you don't have urgency.
Okay, so is there no place for sales pressure? Should we just be focusing on their internal urgency, or how do we kind of play both sides?
I sold to chief procurement officers for 4 years, so I will never be the salesperson that tells you that there's no place for sales pressure, no place for discounts. But the way I sort of rank them is first, do everything you possibly can to uncover that urgency, because
Yeah, so
without
what
it,
that was the other question. While we're on that, what are some of your tips and tricks for actually uncovering that? What questions do you typically use to elicit that? Because again, some people don't want to really share that
yeah,
over.
I will give you my favorite
Thank you.
question.
Yeah,
Um, as soon as I tell folks how to like sort of think about it. So
sure.
first uncover the urgency, because if you have not uncovered a real reason for them to buy, the sales pressure doesn't really work. And I think probably all of us have felt this on a deal before,
Yeah,
where we're like, I don't understand. I just gave them a deal of a lifetime. Why didn't they buy? And it's because they just weren't that interested, because we didn't do a good enough job making sure we had the right priority, the right timeline, etc. So first, make sure you have that urgency locked in. Second, before offering a discount, see where you can add value. So maybe they get a month for free. Maybe they get an extra template. Maybe they get an extra coaching session. See where you can add in a little bit of extra value. And only when regular urgency doesn't work, when adding the value doesn't work, go with discounts. And then a framework that I use when offering discounts is if then, if I can give you a 3% discount, then are you ready to commit to this partnership no later than Friday? So make sure that you're not ever just offering it, you're offering it in that like conditional language
smart.
format.
Yeah, yeah.
But so to answer your question about how do you start uncovering urgency, here's my favorite way to do it. Okay, how often on calls are we like, so what's top of mind for you, or what are your priorities? And then the
Right.
prospect's like, well, it's A and it's B and it's C, and it's always a laundry list of priorities, right? Here's
Yeah.
what we do. We repeat back what they said, because already now we've shown that we are doing active listening, we are hearing them, we are processing what they've shared. We repeat back, and then we say, which of those is the most important for you to get right in the next 6 months, whatever the timeline is. And then they'll say it's actually A. And you're like, okay, so it sounds like the most important thing for us to focus our conversation on is A. Is that most important, or is anything more time sensitive than that? So you're asking sort of the same type of question in a few different ways, because what you
Right.
ultimately want to get them to do is sort of stack rank their priorities to make sure that you have the right priority and the right timeline.
Okay, very smart. That makes sense, Leslie. So, what if I'm just thinking of myself when I'm talking to a prospect? What if their number one priority isn't really tied into the solution you offer? Like it's really not connected. It's like in amongst those priorities, there's something that you can help them with, but it's not top of mind for them. What do you suggest people do in that situation?
Yeah, I like to just call it out. Be like, okay, Dave, when you were listing your priorities, I definitely heard you say C. And that is exactly what my domain expertise is. That's what I help folks like you with. But it sounds like that's not necessarily your top priority right now. Am I hearing that right? Or maybe I just misheard.
Okay, and then they said, "No, you heard me right."
And you're like, okay. I mean, like what would need to change for that to be your top priority? And maybe they're like, just nothing. Like that's just,
Yeah.
you are not the right person to serve me today.
Right.
I think there's still a great opportunity to help, to send them resources, to give them referrals to folks in your network. But maybe through that genuine curiosity, where you pivot away from trying to sell and you're
Mhm.
just really trying to learn so that you can be helpful, you might uncover that it is actually a top priority, or maybe C's very related to A. And you, because you are the expert on solving this, can help them understand why they need to accomplish Z first before they can get to A, right?
Got it.
But
Yeah.
it is this process of leading with questions and leading with curiosity that allow you to either discover if you are the right person to help them, or like sometimes there's just not a sale to be made.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. Don't try to push it too hard if they don't need your thing or they don't need your
And they
service.
probably will need you later. And if you
Right.
were kind and curious and helpful, they will think of you later.
Well, that brings up another question because something that I suck at a lot of different things, but does something I definitely suck at, Leslie, that I think a lot of other people suck at as well, is follow up. So, what tips or ideas do you have for the rest of us to get better at that? And what have you found has worked best for you and your clients? Because again, you're working with a lot of people that have really long-term sales cycles. They're dealing with, Fortune 500s. They don't usually make a decision like that. A lot of follow-up has to happen. What do you recommend as best practices?
Yeah. I am neurodivergent, and my neurodivergent brain has like real object permanence issues. So the moment I don't need to do it immediately, it's gone. It's gone. I've forgotten about it. I forgot that we even had like the most amazing conversation of my
Hey,
entire week. It's just gone.
maybe that's what I am too. I'm neurodivergent
So
too.
I use tasks like it is nobody's business. And what I have found works best for me
Mhm.
is to make it a literal task in my calendar where
Yeah.
like I have time blocked in the future. So if I know that in 6 weeks, I want to make sure I like, look at your LinkedIn or look at your socials and see what's going on with your company and just try to send some sort of personalized note to you or, maybe find a helpful article to send you. I'm going to put that as like a 15-minute time block in my calendar so that the time is held, the task is there, and I make sure that I get it done.
Mm.
That is the way that I have found works best for me. When I'm working with reps, they usually have like a Salesforce or a HubSpot, and so they tend to focus on their tasks more within their CRM, which is
Mhm.
great. Um, I think it's about acknowledging that like even folks with the best brains, we can't remember everything. Like things
Right.
are going to get lost, things are going to get forgotten. So make sure that you create a system so that you are not putting the pressure on yourself to remember. You have outsourced that to technology.
Yeah, smart, smart, smart. So as we're wrapping up, Leslie, tell us a little bit about your book because it looks like it could be very, very helpful for a lot of us.
Oh my gosh, yes, thank you. My book. I just am so delighted. I've been doing like road shows and book signings, and so it has been it's been an honor. Like it has filled my cup so much to talk to people in real life and hear them talk about the impact the book has made. And then obviously it debuted as a USA Today top 50 bestseller, which is
Wow.
I'm so excited. And so like maybe I'll tell you what people are telling me has made the biggest
Well, first
impact
of all,
for
what's the
for
name of the
them.
book?
Yeah, the book is called Profit Generating Pipeline, a proven formula to earn trust and drive revenue. And you can get it anywhere, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, your local bookstore, etc. It's 3 parts, and what I am hearing has made the biggest impact is in the first part. I talk a lot about how to build trust, like with colleagues, with clients, with employees, and I share quite a few of my own failings earlier in my career. And so I'm hearing a lot of positive feedback from people just saying, like, oh, it's nice to know I'm not the only one that's really screwed this up and that,
Yeah.
like, there's a
It's
path
fixable.
to,
And it's
yeah,
fixable. Yeah.
yeah. And then the middle section is the 9-step proven formula for building that profit generating pipeline. It's what my clients pay me, like tens of thousands of dollars to co-create with them. And I give all of the frameworks, the 9-step formula, the templates, the scripts, everything away in the book so that people can be enabled to do it on their own.
That is wonderful. Leslie, this has been great. Thank you very much for sharing some insights. If people would like to connect with you outside of going out and running out and buying your book, where's a good place for them to do that?
Well, they can find me on YouTube. I post every single day on LinkedIn. That's my primary channel, but I'm pretty much on every single social at my name, which is just Leslie Venetz.
Perfect. Leslie, thanks so much. This has been great.
Thank you so much.
All right, everybody, take care and see you on the next one. Thanks for listening to the High Ticket Success Podcast. Want to be featured? Share your story and inspire other premium coaches, consultants, and advisors? Apply now at highticketsuccesspodcast.com/guest.